In this video, I've survived 300 days in Factorio, Death World Island. This video is a culmination of my saga from crash landing on day 1, building a factory, expanding beyond my borders to biter nests over precious resources, and finally launching a rocket into space to beat Factorio for the first time. If you want to check out the first 2 videos in this series, the links will be in the description. But today, the journey begins its embarkment, where we left off with our factory. Day 200. Our factory was nearly complete, producing almost every advanced resource in the game. Beyond our scarce starting resources, we'd secured large patches of iron, stone, and coal, bringing them into our borders and defending them with walls, turrets, radars, and logistics networks for automatic upkeep and maintenance. The only resource left to claim was copper, which was beginning to run dry on our base. So the way forward was an existential mission of survival. By day 201, I had finally completed work on my artillery shell factories. We were producing a steady line of deadly armaments to neutralize biter nests on all sides of the factory. More specifically, my gaze turned south to a major deposit of 46 million copper, enough to survive many lifetimes, but still crawling with biters on all sides, and separated by a large body of water to the south. By day 203, I lined up my train tracks around the island with the shell factory belts to supply my trains with ammunition automatically. All this required twice as much calibration as before, though. Trains are risky endeavors, especially when loaded with fiery payload. And so, riding the train back and forth, it took me until day 205 to figure out how to resupply coal from our southern mines to ensure that the train would run smoothly on its course without the need to keep refueling by hand. Only problem was that even on the southern edge of the island, the train was still too far off from the biter nests to the south, separated again by a huge body of water. Its range still just wasn't far enough to hit them. So to get in range of the south, I decided I'd have to cross the ocean directly by filling everything in with a strip of landfill from north to south. Then I'd have to build a station on the ocean itself where artillery could fire safely and within range of the biter nests on top of the copper. Only then, when the area was secure and neutralized, could I set up my outpost for the last resources needed to launch my rocket. So begins the training montage. Get it? Training? Yeah. It took me till day 208 to produce all the landfill required to position my locomotive, just out in the middle of the ocean. But all for the sake of getting within range of the biter nests on the shore, yet still far enough away to remain safe from their deadly and corrosive missiles of green saliva. But when we parked, within just seconds of the first missile's barrage, we had demonstrated the awesome power of capitalism. Let me tell you, there is no feeling more intensely satisfying than shooting the living daylights out of an entire colony of biter nests. We pooped bombs on them from above, ending their lifestyles of debauchery and sloth. This feeling is so utterly satisfying, kind of like wiping away a very wet stain with a powerful and absorbent paper towel. They were gone forever and dead. For now. Later they'd come back. But until then, now there would be a chance, an opportunity to make our way inland. Day 209, I set a schedule and monitored as the train refueled, parked on its way to the north to load missiles from the factory, and then, after that, snaked along its way back down south to keep continuously beaming everyone nearby with death on the southern shore. Then I began to flesh out more of the infrastructure. I poured more landfill into the ocean and ran power lines closer and closer to the adjacent shore, stopping only a few feet before meeting the mainland. Here it was, a new horizon. But now I'd have to set up and prepare for a new front to the war. I started running everything over, the logistics network, pipes for oil and flamethrowers, lasers for zapping, and even our radars to monitor the oncoming and incumbent attacks I couldn't see as I ran everything back and forth. It all took till day 214. Then I erected a wall, 6 layers thick, for fear I'd kicked the hornet's nest too soon. It made me feel much better when by day 217, I'd finally linked all the logistics hubs to establish a safe route for automatic repairs to the southern wall. Next it was gates, also 6 layers thick. All this to route a train through to our first steps into enemy territory. From there until day 221, I made my way south, laying power lines, tracks, and walls along either side, then planting laser turrets and flamethrowers in the middle to defend the route from biter attacks. And finally, automating its upkeep once again with the logistics network. On day 222, I at last reached the copper node, then walled it in and placed turrets all around to fend off any nearby biters. It was time to cut off the enemy at their root. On day 224, I drove down the artillery train to lay fire upon all nearby biter nests. One by one, we destroyed their homes, picking people off. In the short term, it spurred a retaliation, but one that couldn't last long since there simply weren't any nests left nearby from which to repopulate. My first campaign in the south was complete. The next day, it was on to reinforcing my outpost with more walls, radar, and logistical hubs, then building a station and delivery system for my trains to run on. With this all completed, I began my embarkment on my first attempts to create a complex rail transportation system, envisioning timely departures, resource collection, and of course, bombing. However, this didn't work at all. I tried a crisscrossing rail system, and it didn't work. I even set everything up, bombing all of the forests away. My trains would freeze up or just not even go at all. So I looked up a bunch of Factorio guides and found a bunch of Dashington videos. I liked them, they were good. It made me realize that I was an idiot. And so I started over, filling in more of the land bridge and doubling over the rails. Then I spent 10 more days doubling over more railroads with more tracks and put signals everywhere. But that still didn't work either. You see, adding more trains and more crossings into the mix makes everything a lot more complex. So let's just forget about the trains for now and agree that this whole part was a complete disaster to start out with. Later on I simplified everything because it just started eating up too much time. Day 237. I completed placing the drills for the copper outpost. Day 238. I drove another train up north to bomb the ever-living daylights out of the last of the local biter nests to ease up the attacks on my wall. But before that, they didn't ease up, they just got worse for a day, and then they subsided. Day 240 to 241. It's back to the factory to finish the copper delivery belts and bring in the last of our resources to push toward a rocket. Day 242. It's back to fiddling around with the rail signals since my trains were breaking at weird times and just stopping in the middle of nowhere. All this culminated in taking a break after 30 hours of play and seeking information. I watched a bunch of videos by my friend Troopin and simplified my intersection designs with a roundabout. Then I changed my one-rail two-way system to a right-side-only track system on my trains. This worked a lot better. Replacing everything and redoing all of my systems took until day 249 though, since I'd messed up so many systems and had to revise everything to fit the new designs. But finally, my copper collection was complete. Complete. For real. Actually, I lied. It took way longer than that. I spent the next 13 days until day 262 just running back and forth all over my old railroad tracks and scrapping everything in favor of a two-rail system with the trains running on the right-hand side again. It took forever, and I even had to open up our defenses in the northern outpost temporarily to accommodate the enlarged rail structure. But in the end, now I had a train system that was faster, more reliable, and perhaps most importantly, could send artillery trains to bomb nearby our mining operations to keep everything safe from attacks without the need of my constant intervention and upkeep. Finally, by day 263, with the trains running smoothly, my attention turned once again to my factory to manage everything's production. After all that effort, we had practically unlimited iron and copper, meaning I could now make the last major pushes toward getting a rocket off the planet, undistracted. By day 265, I'd enhanced the oil cracking system with more petroleum for plastic. Then I bombed the last remaining forests and completed the entire logistics network over the last remaining stretches of factory. With all that completed, I finally started finalizing my own personal logistics requests so that my inventory would be automatically managed by my Logibots for me, without even thinking. My physical body became the factory itself. Day 272, it's on to expanding the last of the smelting and power production. Then I took a brief detour on day 276 to try to expand out to another uranium deposit by the far east of the iron outpost, but ultimately, that turned out to be a massive failure and honestly just totally unnecessary anyway in the first place, so I just let it get horribly destroyed and ignored it. Oh well. I mean, no one died though. As it turned out, we were fine with just spamming steam and coal power anyway, so never mind that. Nothing to see over here. After that, days 277 to 280, it was a brief attempt to make the Spidertron into an actually viable force of destruction by manufacturing a bunch of warheads and then loading them into it. Ashamed as I am to say it, this also turned out to be just an utter disaster since the artillery, in comparison, was just so much more effective at taking out biter nests. So I had to run away again in the Spidertron, but not before taking just a few more biter lives in the north. So it was. I had expended most of my military capabilities. Now it was just that last kick, that final sprint to the finish, with all the necessary ingredients collected to make my huge heaping pile of crap factory and put it all into a rocket launched for outer space. And so, on day 283, I returned home to manage the last few endgame resources required for the next stage, namely, rocket fuel from light oil cracking so I could get the ship up and running. Day 286, it's on to automating the construction of solar panels, power accumulators, except now with our full logistics system in function, we didn't even need belts anymore. We just had servitors picking things up and flying through the air with all the necessary ingredients being beamed into the ingredient chests like magic. On day 288, I took another break from factory-related duties to test out the stationary artillery emplacement, which turned out to be even more effective and powerful at destroying biter real estate than its train-mounted sibling.
It's free
Biter
real estate.
There's something really, kind of oddly satisfying about coordinating missile strikes upon biter nests in the distance, filled with the faces of people you'll never know, but ultimately cleansing the map of red stain which had been spreading like an abomination heretofore. Day 289, it's on to constructing the exciting footprint of the rocket silo, all of which requires rocket control units, low-density structures, and of course, rocket fuel to launch the ship into outer space. Everything among these ingredients delivered by logistic bots, just from a bunch of random stuff I hacked together lying around the factory because I'd already run out of room, and ain't nobody got time for that. In particular, blue computer chips and rocket control units may be two of the most resource-intensive pieces in the entire game. To put it into perspective, the whole process looks something like this. Make assemblers that make speed modules, then use the speed modules to make better assemblers, then use those better assemblers to make even better speed modules, then use those even better speed modules to make even better speed modules, then use those even better speed modules to make even better speed modules. Then use those even better speed modules to make even better speed modules. Then use those even better speed modules to make even better speed modules. And once you've done all that, it puts you 1% closer to launching the rocket. This was my task from days 293 to 298. Fortunately, you can speed everything up by cramming even more speed modules into the machines that are already making speed modules to begin with, ultimately going at a faster and faster rate until eventually the whole process occurs much more rapidly. At last, right around day 300, I made a bunch of rocket control unit factories, all supplied with even more speed modules, ultimately finishing up the rocket's construction by around day 301. Finally, space, 36 hours, 36 minutes, and 2 seconds. A run full of mistakes. Honestly, nothing to brag about. Not a very hard run. The peninsula made it a lot easier. But a pretty fun one since this is my first time beating the game altogether. Now, I guess the next feat would be to launch a rocket once per minute, but I have to go to sleep now. Ultimately, I think the main thing that made this playthrough take so long was I didn't have any idea how many resources I had to make space for, and I also didn't really know the right way to structure your factory overall, or how to build the... Look, there were a lot of things I didn't know how to do. But, I mean, to be fair, the fun part about Factorio is improving your base from run to run. Just kidding, there's nothing fun about Factorio, it's just a lot of work. Anyway, I do hope you got something out of these 36 hours of self-imposed torture. I do look forward to our next meeting. But until then, I am Ambiguous Amphibian. A major thanks to my patrons who learned the valuable lesson that the real factory is the friends we made along the way. Until next time.